All right, deep divers, buckle up because today we are going deep, deep, deep into a world you might not expect. Soilless growing media. Yep, that's right. We're talking about growing plants without dirt, but trust me, this is way cooler than you think.
It's true. This isn't just about some trendy hydroponic setup you see on Instagram.
Exactly. We're going way beyond that. We're digging into the history, the science, and the sheer ingenuity behind growing plants in things like coconut husks, volcanic rock, even stuff like expanded clay. And our guide for this deep dive is a fascinating fact sheet from Oklahoma State University.
It's packed with research, and it really makes you think differently about where our food comes from.
For real. Okay, so to kick things off, can you give us a little background on soilless growing? Like, how far back does this idea go?
Well, you might be surprised to learn that the roots of soilless growing, pun intended, can be traced all the way back to the 1800s.
Really? That's way older than I would have guessed.
It is, in fact, the very first nutrient solution, which is basically a scientifically formulated plant food, was developed way back in 1860. Two guys, Knopp and Sachs, they were the pioneers.
1860, that's wild. I mean, we're talking about a time when people were still using horses and buggies. These guys were way ahead of their time.
Absolutely, but it took a while for these ideas to really catch on.
That makes sense. New ideas often take a while to take root.
It wasn't until 1937 that a guy named Dr. Garrick actually coined the term hydroponics. That's when things started to gain some real momentum.
Hydroponics, so that's where it all began. So what did those early hydroponic systems look like?
Those early setups were pretty basic, often using things like sand or gravel to support the plants.
Sand and gravel. I can't imagine that was very efficient.
You're right, they weren't exactly lightweight.
I bet. And not very practical for growing anything on a larger scale.
Exactly. And that's where things start to get really interesting. In the late 1960s, there was a major breakthrough, the introduction of rock wool as a growing medium.
Rock wool? Okay, now we're talking. That sounds a little more high-tech, but what exactly is rock wool?
So picture this. You take melted rock and spin it into these fine fibers, kind of like how cotton candy is made, but a lot less tasty.
Melted rock spun into fibers. That sounds almost magical.
It is pretty cool, and it turned out to be a game changer for soilless growing.
Okay, I'm definitely intrigued. We're going to dive into the wonderful world of rock wool and other soilless mediums right after this quick break. So, rock wool, huh? Melted rock spun into fibers. That sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But it's become pretty commonplace in the world of soilless growing.
Well, with so many options out there, what makes a good soilless medium in general?
Great question. Imagine you're a plant root, just trying to do your thing. You need a comfy place to grow, right?
Makes sense. Good aeration, some moisture.
Exactly. And that's what those researchers at Oklahoma State were looking at. They talk about characteristics like drainage, durability, having a neutral pH. It's about creating that Goldilocks zone for plant roots.
Not too hot, not too cold, just right.
You got it. And just like with anything, each material has its own quirks. Take rock wool, for instance. It's a superstar for commercial growers, but...
But there's always a but.
Right. One thing is that rock wool doesn't biodegrade, so disposal can be a bit of a headache.
So not so great for the environment then. What about something like coconut coir? That sounds a lot more, I don't know, approachable.
It is. Coir, that fiber stuff from coconut husks, it's really gaining popularity, and for good reason. Eco-friendly, great at holding moisture, and its pH is perfect for a lot of plants.
Sounds like a winner. Are there any downsides to coir?
Well, one thing to watch out for is salinity.
Salinity. Like too much salt.
Yeah, depending on how it's processed, coir can sometimes have higher salt levels, which plants don't really like. But a good rinse before using it usually does the trick.
Good to know. So even with a natural material like that, a little prep work goes a long way. This is making me think, what other unexpected things can be used for soilless growing?
Oh, you'd be amazed. Another popular one is expanded clay pebbles.
Okay, now those I've seen. They give those houseplants a really cool look. What are they exactly?
So they're made by baking clay at crazy high temperatures.
Baking clay, like in a pottery kiln.
Kind of. It puffs up and gets super porous, which is great for drainage and letting those roots breathe.
And they're reusable, right?
You got it. Big plus for sustainability.
Oh.
But they can be a bit mischievous.
Mischievous? How so?
Well, those petals sometimes try to escape and can clog up pumps and filters.
Ah, sneaky little things. So it's a trade-off, huh? Good drainage, but they might wander off.
Pretty much. Now let's talk perlite and vermiculite.
Oh, yeah. I've definitely seen bags of those at the garden center. One's white and fluffy, and the other's, I don't know, kind of sparkly.
That's them. Perlite, the white one. That's actually volcanic rock that's been heated until it pops, kind of like popcorn.
Volcanic rock popcorn, that's wild.
Right. Super airy and lightweight, but on its own, it's not great at holding onto nutrients, which is where vermiculite comes in.
Okay, so what's so special about vermiculite?
Well, it's another mineral that gets the heat treatment, and that makes it amazing at storing water and nutrients.
So perlite for air, vermiculite for the good stuff.
Exactly.
But,
There's always a but.
right, because vermiculite is so good at holding moisture, it's easy to overdo it, which can lead to root rot.
Too much of a good thing, I guess. Wow, we've covered a lot. So many options, so little time. And those are just a few of the most common ones. We haven't even touched on things like oasis cubes, rice hulls, even sawdust.
Wait, sawdust, like from cutting wood.
You got it. It just goes to show that with a little ingenuity, even the most unexpected things can be used to grow plants.
My mind is officially blown. So we've got coconut husks, volcanic rock, clay pebbles, even sawdust. For someone just starting to explore soilless growing, it seems a little overwhelming.
It can be. The trick is to find the right tool for the job. The best soilless medium, it all depends on the plant, the system, and even the grower's preferences.
Wow, so many options. Coconut husks, volcanic rock popcorn, clay pebbles running amok. Who knew growing plants without soil could be so wild, right?
Yeah, it really is a testament to how innovative this field is, constantly evolving.
Totally. And it seems like sustainability is a huge driving force behind it all, always looking for ways to be more efficient with resources.
Absolutely. Speaking of sustainability, one thing that really jumped out at me from the research was this focus on reusability. Did you know that some soilless mediums can actually be sterilized and used again?
Wait, seriously, I just figured they were a one-time deal. Use them and toss them.
Not at all. Those expanded clay pebbles we talked about, those can be washed and reused multiple times. And it's not just those. Perlite, even mineral wool, can be sterilized, though it's a bit trickier.
That's amazing. Like giving those materials a second life, a second home for plants, so much better than adding to a landfill.
Exactly. And think about it economically. Being able to reuse these materials, especially for large-scale growers, that's huge.
Okay, so that's a win for sustainability and for saving some money. I like it. What else surprised you in the research? Anything really unexpected?
Honestly, just the sheer range of materials surprised me. We talked about a lot today, but this research even mentioned things like rice hulls, composted bark. It's incredible.
Rice hulls, like from processing rice. See, now that's thinking outside the box. It really makes you wonder what other unconventional materials we might be growing plants in someday.
I know, it's an exciting field, always experimenting, always innovating. And it's about more than just finding substitutes for soil. It's about coming up with these really elegant solutions, making sure we can grow enough food for everyone. Well,
That's a really important point. Because even though I'll probably stick to regular potting soil for my own little houseplants, learning about all this, it changes how I see things. Like when I see food at the grocery store, I'll be thinking about all these different ways it might have been grown.
it really broadens your perspective, doesn't it? It shows how much ingenuity goes into something most people take for granted.
It really does. This whole deep dive, it's been incredible. Who would have thought we'd be talking about coconut husks, volcanic rock popcorn, and even sawdust as ways to grow plants?
Whole hidden world, right? And it's right under our noses. Or I guess you could say under our roots.
Well played. All right, deep divers, on that note, we're going to leave you with this. Next time you're picking out your produce, take a second, look a little closer. You never know, those fruits and veggies might just have an amazing soilless story to tell. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and remember, there's always something new to discover.